Connected Homeschooling, Episode 15.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Landley. I'm a homeschool mom, an author, and I'm co-founder of iHomeschoolNetwork.com. And you're listening to Connected Homeschooling with Devin Dabney.
Welcome to the Connected Homeschooling Podcast, where we connect homeschooling families like yours with leaders, authors, speakers, and all-around interesting people who provide great conversations, tips, and advice. Now here's your host, Devin Dabney.
Well, hello and Happy New Year to everyone. So glad you're taking some time out of your schedule to join me for the Connected Homeschooling Podcast. This is our first episode of 2014, and I'm excited to bring you a very great interview with Demetria Zinga from the Christian Homeschool Moms podcast. A while back, she had the opportunity to interview me for her podcast, and I just was really impressed with her and the things that she's doing on her show. So I decided to bring her on to the Connected Homeschooling show to share her message and her journey in homeschooling, and also to share some of the resources that she's using and also that she provides. So you're in for a treat. Stay tuned for the interview with Demetria Zinga.
Well, my guest today is Demetria Zinga. She's a wife, homeschooling mom, and also the host of the Christian Homeschool Moms podcast. Demetria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Devin. Glad to be here.
All right, well, I've had the pleasure of being a guest on your show, and I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast. And so I wanted to bring you on to the Connected Homeschooling show just to have you share with my audience and just tell us about what's going on with the Christian Homeschool Moms podcast, and just also what's going on with you. And one way we like to get the show started is to have, I guess, share something about themselves and their family, to just introduce themselves to us.
Okay, well, my name is Demetria, as you've said, and my family and I, we are living now in the Monterey area of California. We moved from the deep south of Alabama to California recently in the last 2 years, and it's a really nice part of the area. It's very mild climate, not too hot, not too cold. So we love it here. I have two daughters, one in 6th grade. She's introverted and thoughtful and contemplative. And then my kindergartner, she's my happy-go-lucky, spunky, energetic kid. So I also am married to a Navy reservist, and he also works as a cybersecurity specialist. So we rely heavily on him to keep our family safe on the web. We're always asking him, what do we need to do to stay safe? So that's, he's been really helpful with that. And I've been a homeschooling mom for about officially 7 years. That's not counting the many days of learning before kindergarten, but just since kindergarten. I'm also a songwriter, I'm a podcaster, I'm a work-at-home mom, mompreneur, and I run an online business helping other women find success with their online businesses. So we're pretty much a musical-oriented family. We love songwriting, we love piano, and we just enjoy the flexibility that the homeschooling lifestyle offers us.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and glad you had the opportunity to just share who you are with us. And we like to just share people's stories as a way of inspiring the audience and encouraging them. And also, one way that we do it is to start off with a scripture or a quote. You have a scripture or quote you want to share with us?
Sure. It's Luke 12:48, and it's not the entire verse, just a portion of it. And it says, "For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required." So I like to paraphrase that to say, to whom much is given, much is required. And the reason I love this verse for my life personally, I see that as a homeschooling family, and even just individually, the Lord has been so gracious and so abundant in his love toward me and his generosity. And I just feel that whatever he's placed into my hands as a gift, that I have the charge to take good care of it and be a good steward over it on this earth. So I really take it seriously that one day we're all going to give account for how we managed the gifts and the opportunities that the Lord provided for us. So I see home education at this place in my life as one of those gifts. And there are a lot more A lot more gifts, of course. I mean, God is just abundantly gracious. But for 2014 especially, I feel that this verse is really important in my life because it's a year of restoration. It's a year to let go of the hindrances of the past, to rise up and fly like an eagle and just be responsible over what God has given us and told us to do. So that's my verse, Luke 12:48.
Well, great. And we'll link up to that verse and things that we're sharing here in the show notes for this episode. So let's talk about your homeschooling journey. There's so many different paths, and as I've had different guests on the show, they've talked about how they ended up as a homeschooling family. So take us on that journey and just walk us through how you and your husband, your family became a homeschooling family.
Okay, well, it's been quite a journey. I had never really heard of homeschooling until about college. I met a girl in college who announced to a group of us one night. We were hanging out, college kids hang out, and we're just talking, and she told us that she was homeschooled. So, that was the first time I'd heard of it. I wasn't quite sure what that meant exactly. I thought it was interesting, but I just sort of left it at that. And so my undergrad degree is in child development, so I always knew that I had a love for children. I enjoy teaching, especially in the younger years, but I also knew that I didn't care much for the public school system. And if I could help it one day, if I ever had any kids of my own, I said that I would hopefully be able to place them into a really good private school. My plan was to become a director of a child care center, and I wanted to help my center become accredited under the NAEYC, which is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And that meant essentially that we'd be jumping through a lot of hoops and a lot of standards and making sure that our center could meet the requirements. So I wanted to lead a high-quality child development center as a career focus. But right after college, like most other college undergrads, I found myself without a job. So I took the first thing that came along. I ended up working at a university library for 4 years. And it was during that time that I continued to sort of just haphazardly run into the idea of homeschooling. I was helping patrons do research and find reference materials they needed for research projects. And somehow or another, I continued to stumble upon the keyword homeschooling in my search results. And that was before I was married, before I had kids. So at this point, there really was no point of reference for home education in my life. But again, I kept those things in mind. So about 2 years after I had graduated college, I began working. I got married. A year later, we had our first child. About a year and a half after that, I decided to resign from my job at the university and become a full-time stay-at-home mom and graduate student. And this is when I began to seriously pursue the idea of homeschooling my daughter whenever she would begin kindergarten. And once we got closer to decision-making time, I showed my husband the statistics and how well homeschoolers were doing. At this point, I had done a good bit of research. And so I convinced him, and he was convinced, I was convinced, and we were on board, to do this. And we decided just to go with it. It was kindergarten. We couldn't mess up kindergarten, so we figured we could start with that and take it 1 year at a time. And we continued doing that. And we said that, we've already been teaching her, and so we should continue doing what we were doing. She was an exceptionally bright child. She was already reading and doing most of the traditional kindergarten work since she was 3. So we didn't see any reason to just send her to a typical public school. And we definitely weren't interested in forking up the cash for private school tuition. So we just decided to keep her at home, and we've been on board ever since.
Wow, that's definitely quite a journey. But
yes, it was.
I think many of us kind of look at it and think, all right, well, if I can put them in a private school or something like that, that would be great. But I think sometimes just even looking at the dollars will make homeschool a great alternative to that, or a great option in general.
Definitely.
Well, let's talk about some of the curriculum choices. I mean, there are thousands of different things that people can use for homeschooling. Of course, you have some of the popular things like Abeka or Saxon, some of those programs. What have you decided to use, or what have you been using so far with homeschooling?
Well, like a lot of homeschooling families, we've been through a wide range of homeschool curriculum throughout the years. And over the past 7+ years, I've learned what works for family and what doesn't. And I would have to say that today we're pretty open just to a wide variety of ideas for lessons. We pull from a lot of different resources. So we use the library a lot. We use Netflix, Amazon Prime, and YouTube, and books that we pick up from used book sales and that kind of thing. But as far as the major publishers, I've really been enjoying, for math, we have used Saxon, but today we are using Matthew C. for my younger daughter, and definitely she's enjoying that. She loves Matthew C. My oldest is using Khan Academy for math, which is free. We're also using, it's our first year with Sunlight, so we're using Core F, which is World Cultures. We're also enjoying materials from Classical Academic Press. We're using their Writing Rhetoric and Song School Latin. And we do love the virtual classes. Whenever we can take some, we go to Kirklick and we take some of those classes and join, like, for example, they have an American Girl Club and a Lego Club, I believe. And those are free over at Kirklick. We also just started taking foreign language courses at italki, where it's an online, it's a site where you can take foreign language classes with a tutor. So we've been taking French with a French tutor who lives in Europe, whose native language is French, and we've been enjoying that. And as for our style, we're kind of like a mesh of different styles. It depends on the time of the year. We could have more of a Charlotte Mason approach during the spring when we do more nature studies. But at this point in time, I'm more of into independent study approach for my oldest daughter, so I'm a bit more hands-off with her. She's in 6th grade, so we're trying to help her to be a little bit more independent with her work. And my 6-year-old is really extremely kinesthetic, so we have to do a lot of hands-on crafts and activities, a lot of creative movement and music with her. So as for methods, I would say that we're definitely an eclectic bunch.
Wow, you've given me some resources to look into. It seems like you have a lot going on, and that can be a good thing. And I believe that as you were talking, I just thought about the fact that it seems like you're having some successes with homeschooling. But inevitably, in most cases, we run into challenges with homeschooling.
Exactly.
Have you faced any challenges or any that you care to share?
Boy, have I ever. I've faced quite a few, and I still face them daily. I'm a super planner, organizer, type A kind of mama. I really, despite my laid-back personality, I'm type A. I plan, and I like to get it done. And so that means that it translates into my homeschooling sometimes, and I have to lighten up a whole lot. I have to lighten up and learn how to relax and just enjoy the journey rather than trying to create the journey. So my number one challenge has really been myself. And I have to fight my own instincts with, wanting to take over, take charge, and make it happen my way, box everyone into my plans. And homeschooling really can't be any fun that way. And so I learned that really early on. Over the years, I've learned slowly to relax a lot more, and I'm still an organizer junkie. I still love my planners. But one thing I've done is I've learned not to count on those plans to stay intact throughout the school year, and that it really is okay. It's okay to change curriculum in the middle of the semester if something doesn't work, or to completely revamp our schedule and do things differently. And another challenge I've had is just taking too much upon myself, attempting to teach too many subjects per semester. That amounted to overkill and burnout really fast, even with just my 2 kids. So I can imagine how stressed out I'd be if I had more than 2. So I've learned to narrow down my expectations and get back to the basics. And in the younger years, basics is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And as my oldest daughter has gotten older, she's had her own unique interests that make things, really fun and just interesting for us. So I don't always have to be in charge of planning, and I can take some ideas from my kids and just listen to them and see what their interests are and go from there.
Okay. Now, of course, one of the questions most homeschoolers get is, what about socialization? How do you address the social aspects with your kids, or even when someone asks you about socialization? What's your response?
It's funny. I still get asked that question from time to time, even from within the homeschooling community. And it's because different families have different ideas of what socialization means to them. So what I've come to realize is that, no two families is alike. So socialization for our family has meant taking advantage of local classes that's offered to homeschoolers. And, we have a lot of community events happening in our area, like freebie days at the museums. We have community classes. And just being involved in our church activities, especially for the kids. We were involved in Awana last year, for example. So plugging into those things. Also, co-ops are a great option, and playgroups. And so from the outside looking in, those are things that I could explain to a non-homeschooling family, that there are tons of activities for homeschoolers. But from homeschooler to homeschooler, it's kind of just really letting people know that, we're okay with our choices and what we're choosing to do or not to do. And it's just based on our schedule, our routine, and what works for our family. So currently our family is taking a little, just a small hiatus away from co-ops. Although when we first began homeschooling, it was just an absolute essential to our well-being, at that time, because we were new to it all, and just the whole world of homeschooling and having our daughter make other homeschooling friends. That was a really important aspect of our education, and my husband wanted to make sure that we were involved and, that we weren't isolated. So at that time, it was really important. But today, we kind of feel differently about it. We found that a lot of our outings and fellowship, our group time has happened more organically, really just as a result of authentically building relationships with other homeschoolers we've met around our county. So sometimes we'll travel. For example, this week we traveled 30 minutes away twice a month to meet up with another homeschooling friend, because it's a connection that's meaningful to us. So co-ops have been helpful for us in the past, but as of lately, we found that, the commitment, it's not something we're willing to follow through on weekly. So we made our connections in other ways, like through community outreach or meeting up for play dates at friends' houses or meeting at the park, just real authentic fellowship. And plus we have all those community classes and church groups. So there's really not a lack of things for homeschoolers to get involved in and to be quote unquote social. There's always something happening in your community that we can get involved with.
I think that's part of the beauty of homeschooling. You can make those decisions like that. And that's one of the observations that we've made recently,
right,
that we like to probably hold back from some of those things like co-ops and you have those options because you're able to direct what your family's going to do. And so I tend to agree with you on just the idea of co-ops and just kind of assessing things as you come up to it and just doing what's best for your family. But there's definitely no shortage of social opportunities if you're involved in anything like church or just building relationships like you mentioned. So that's great. Now we're going to transition a bit and talk about some of your business ventures and entrepreneurial ventures. I mentioned earlier in the show that you interviewed me on your podcast, and it's called Christian Homeschool Moms podcast. Tell us a little bit about that podcast and just share with us what it's about.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The idea for Christian Homeschool Moms, it was originally formed in March of 2012. So we had just moved to California. I was feeling really depressed by that cross-country move. I missed my friends. I missed my family back in Alabama. And here we are in California starting a brand new life. So we completely uprooted our family and our connections that we'd had. And there were just days that I was so tempted to just enroll my kids in school. I would look out the window of my house in my new neighborhood and see the moms walking their kids to our nearby school, which is only just a few blocks away. I felt lonely. I didn't know anyone in this entire city. I had no references to whom I should connect with, and except for the one, we were in a classical conversations group at the time, so I was involved in that, but I still felt really lonely, and it was out of that loneliness that I desired to reach other homeschooling moms who may feel the same way. So I began with creating videos, and my first homeschooling video was uploaded to YouTube a few years back in 2010, but it was kind of more of a hobby. It was something I was just doing for fun. And I stopped creating the videos for 2 years. And so I decided that maybe if I used videos as a way to get a message of hope and encouragement out there to others, I could help to heal myself and my family. So that's what I did. And months after I began creating the videos, at the point at which I had about 69 videos, I decided it was time to begin blogging. And then I wanted to create a website that would reflect an overall mission that was bigger than me, that didn't just focus on my own endeavors, but combined the voices of many homeschooling moms to encourage other moms to homeschool with the spirit of joy. And so Christian Homeschool Moms officially opened its doors and went live in August of 2012. And I also started the podcast around that time as well. And it's been going strong ever since.
Okay, now was that your first online venture, or did you have any previous projects that you were doing online?
Well, it's not my first online venture. Back in 2003, right when I resigned from my job and became a full-time stay-at-home mom and a graduate student, I realized right away that I needed to replace my income from my job. So I started my first online venture. Then I was selling ebooks and doing some affiliate marketing for other companies. And then I started my very first podcast back in 2005. It was an online radio show, if you remember that term. It's kind of old school, but it's called Christian Ladies Connect and the Christian Ladies Talk Radio program. And when podcasting became brand new in 2006, I turned that online radio program into a podcast. So at that point, I began several more podcasts. And at that time, I was also running an internet coaching business. I was assisting small companies and entrepreneurs to just get online, get blogging, get podcasting, and use digital media.
Now, what are some of the topics that you discuss on that site and through the podcast, even in the videos?
Well, I like to talk about things that I know are going to encourage homeschooling moms of the Christian faith. So they vary, the topics vary from spiritual encouragement to practical tips on how to teach a specific subject more effectively, or I might discuss the differences between like various philosophical views of homeschooling, like different methods and techniques that can be applied. I also talk about meeting just the various needs of our kids, how to plan and organize more effectively. Those are more practical topics that I try to expound on more. But a lot of it mainly is just spiritual encouragement.
Okay. Now, in the pre-show, you mentioned to me that you have another venture that you've been working on that's going to be releasing soon. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. So I have been working vigorously on a new project, which is really just what I did in 2006, revamped and relaunching it and rebranding. So the name of this business is Web Success Coaching, and it's going to be my online venture where I'll be adding tutorials and training on just different aspects of online marketing and social media and podcasting, and it really has a mompreneur kind of bent to it. I like to help mompreneurs, solopreneurs, and also corporations and establish a successful web-based business and turn their passions into profit. So I really just focus on what is it that you love to do, what is it that you can't, not talk about. You're always talking about it and you love to do that. Why don't you turn that into profit for your family?
Okay, well, we look forward to that, and
awesome.
We'll link up to it, and hopefully some people will check it out and just take advantage of your expertise in that area.
Awesome.
Well, the next segment, this last segment here, is called 7 with Devin, and this is where we really pull out the resources and different things that are going to help our listeners on a practical level, and you've definitely mentioned a lot of them already thus far in the interview, but we're going to take a look at some of the resources and get some advice from you for homeschooling families. The first question is, and I'll actually link the first two questions together. What is the top free resource and what is the top paid resource that you recommend for listeners? And this could be something like Evernote or a software program, or it could be something that's a physical product.
Okay. Well, I have a free resource that I created that I could share with you. It's called Avoiding Homeschool Burnout, Taking the Easier Road to the Home Education Journey. And this book really, it just covers my entire homeschooling journey from the very beginning until where I am today. It just shares some key tips on how I overcame my struggles. And I use assessments. I share info on how to assess your season of life, your child's season of life, and assess your method in order to determine if there's anything you should change in moving forward. So it's all about making a homeschool environment and situation that's conducive to your family and catering to your children's needs, and plus your needs as a husband and wife, and being on the same page together to make it work, because really it's not just education, it's life. So we have to make assessments about our seasons in life. What works today may not necessarily work next year. So assessing our methods, because that's the way children can learn best, is when we're constantly reassessing what we're doing from year to year. So that book is called Avoiding Homeschool Burnout, Taking the Easier Road to the Home Education Journey. And it's free.
Okay. And what would be a paid resource?
And my paid resource I would recommend my ebook, Kick Your Fears to the Curb, 10 Motivating Tips to Help You Overcome Homeschooling Fears. And so this book is mainly for those who are interested in homeschooling, have not yet begun to take the first step toward it, and just wanting to know a little bit more about it, maybe want some information about what they should do. There are some questions and answers, so it's sort of a Q&A. It's what if my friends and family don't agree, so I have answers for that. What if I can't find the time? What if I don't have the patience, or I'm not qualified, don't have the resources? So these are all things that we've all asked ourselves as homeschoolers before we got started. What if my kids don't listen to me? What about socialization? It's a question you just asked me. Can I really teach high school? What about college? So I try to answer a lot of these questions in that book, and it's kind of a precursor or a step toward really plugging in and saying, okay, yes, we do want to homeschool. And I think it's a great book. You can, gift it to a friend who is thinking about homeschooling, or if you yourself is thinking, whoever's thinking about it, who's listening today, would like to make a decision, an educated decision about home education to see if it's good for your family or not, then I think this would be a great resource.
Okay. Now, if you think back to when you were beginning homeschooling, if you were able to start over, what would be something that you do differently, or that would be your first step to help yourself in the homeschooling journey?
That's a good question. There would be a lot of things I would actually change, but I guess specifically, if I could turn the hands of the clock back in time, I would definitely lighten up. I would lessen my load. I would choose only a few basic curriculum to meet my kids' basic learning needs and not get caught up in all the bells and whistles, and just focus on the essentials. I would make it really easy for myself and for my children, and just focus on the basics.
Okay. Now, kind of related to that, what would be your best advice for new homeschooling moms?
I think I would advise that wherever you are in your journey, whether you're a newbie homeschooler or you've been down this road for 12 years or longer, you're about to graduate your kids, just focus on the essentials and forget about the non-essentials. Just relax, take it easy, enjoy the moment, and then if you have to, then make yourself pull away from the struggle of it all, so you can just simply spend time, quality time, doing things with your kids, things that your kids enjoy, that you enjoy, and that make sure that you're making beautiful memories together. For example, last night my daughter was asking me, well, will you play a game with me? And I realized that it had been weeks before, the last time I had actually sat down and played a game with her, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm working a lot, but what about the quality time? So our kids need that. So just make sure that you're making memories together that your kids will remember when they're grown up. They'll remember the good times you had.
Excellent advice, and it's easy to get caught up in just all the different things that we have going on. I think that's advice for whether you're a new homeschooling parent or not.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in all these different things going on, but
right.
It's definitely important to focus on the essentials and just avoid comparing yourself with other families and doing all these different things that can trap us. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, three more questions here. The next two are somewhat related, but what has been your greatest reward, and then what has been your greatest challenge as a homeschooling mom?
Okay, so I think my greatest reward is knowing that my kids respect, honor, and love me. I think that's my greatest reward. Just having time to just be with them so much. It's an honor and it's a joy, and it pays to know that I have my kids' heart and that they have a relationship with the Lord and that they love Him. And to me, that's just the best. And as far as a challenge, I think my greatest challenge has just been pulling myself away from the expectations, the ideologies and things that I'd had of what I wanted my life to be before marriage and kids, and to realize that my newest role as a wife and a mom and now a homeschooling mom, that this is a great role, and there are challenges with being a stay-at-home mom that are so unique to being a homeschooling parent that sometimes only another homeschooling parent can understand the struggles that we go through. And that's why I'm so grateful to podcasters such as yourself, who put out great content and interviews that can help us keep going on this journey. And that's why I wanted to do the same. So that's been my biggest challenge.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the compliment. And just as we were talking about before, just more and more people who are putting out good content and who are reaching out, especially even homeschool dads. So
exactly,
we're here to support and also to do our part. And so I'm glad to see people encouraging each other. You mentioned
right.
something about just the unique challenges and also the rewards of being a stay-at-home mom. And just speaking of uniqueness, we want to close out this segment with just talking about a unique talent or a characteristic about you that a lot of people may not know.
Okay, well, I thought really long and hard about this, and I think I'll take it from a different angle than I originally thought, and maybe this will help someone. I think most people don't know how extremely introverted I used to be, and also I used to have extremely low self-esteem. Growing up in public school, and unfortunately, even as an adult in the workplace, I suffered from social bullying, and so many of us do. And the way I've overcome those negative influences, those negative words spoken over me and to me, is through challenging myself to face my fears head on. And also I've learned just the power of positive confession and only believing the mirror of God's word and what He says about me, and believing nothing else but what does the Lord say about me. And so it's only through God's word I've been able to overcome the extreme introversion and low self-esteem. But those are things that, when people see, you in front of the camera or on a podcast and you're speaking to thousands of people, sometimes listeners and viewers don't understand the challenges that you've been through to get to that point where you're able to do that, right? So I just wanted to really showcase that God can take a really, really shy person and allow them to have the courage to get out there, to speak up, and to encourage others.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because you're not the first person who's said that. And it's interesting because I too am an introvert, and we're out here always in the public visibility, or we're doing podcasting, so we're reaching out to perfect strangers, right. and we're talking, having these conversations in a public light, and doing things that keep us visible.
Exactly.
But like you mentioned, the Lord can do some things with that, and as we step out of our comfort zone or we do different things, He's able to get some glory from that, and we're able to, I guess, be a blessing to others. So,
exactly.
So keep it up, and definitely let Him continue to use you through your ventures.
Thanks. Same to you.
Well, with the podcast, when people get to this point in the interview, as a way to reward them for continuing to listen, we like to reward them with the resource of the week. And we mentioned a resource one of your ebooks in the pre-show. Why don't you tell us about that ebook and just more about that resource?
Okay, so I have an ebook, and it is Kick Your Fears to the Curb, 10 Motivating Tips to Help You Overcome Homeschooling Fears. And I did mention this earlier. Typically, this book would go for $4.99, and I would like to offer it to your readers for $2.99, and your listeners. This book is, like I said, it's very helpful for those who are considering home education, who want to know, you know, these are all of the questions I have. You know, what if my friends and family don't agree, and what have you? All kinds of questions that we have when we're considering homeschooling, because there is a lot of fear that comes with the idea of home education, especially when we may not have the support. You know, some people don't have a very supportive network of friends or family. So I think this book is helpful in that it just gives you sort of that it's almost like boot camp, because it kind of gives you a little push and says, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can find the time. Yes, you have the patience you need. You have everything you need. God has qualified you. He has provided you with everything that you need to home educate your children, and He will make a way. If you really feel that you need to be able to do it, but you just don't see where your current situation and circumstances will allow for it, if you really just seek the Lord about it, there is a way to do it, and the Lord can help you. Either there's a season for that, maybe it's not right now, but maybe there's a season around the corner where it will be possible, but He'll help you and give you what you need. So that's what this book is all about.
Okay, and we'll link up to that in our show notes.
Awesome.
The last thing that we're going to do is just have you to tell us where's the best place to for our readers and of the podcast notes, and also for listeners to connect with you online. If you want to share your social media spaces and also the web address for your blog and podcast.
Sure. You can find me at christianhomeschoolmoms.com, and from there you'll find all of my social media outlets for that particular brand, for Christian Homeschool Moms. You'll find my podcast there, as well as my links to Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Google Plus and YouTube. So all of that is located at christianhomeschoolmoms.com. Also, the Web Success Coaching website will be up shortly. Within a few days, we're looking for that launch to happen. So that is websuccesscoaching.com. And I will also have all of my social media outlets there as well for that brand.
Okay, well, Demetria, it's been a pleasure having you on the Connected Homeschooling Show. I know you've definitely blessed me as a host, and also that it's going to serve as some encouragement for people who may be considering homeschooling, but also those of us who've been doing it for several years. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Awesome, Devin. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you and to be on your podcast.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like 2014 is off to a great start for the Connected Homeschooling Podcast. I really enjoyed that interview with Demetria, and I hope you did as well. And if you'd like to share the word about the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. Particularly this episode, you can link to connectedhomeschooling.com/episode 15. You can post about it on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Google Plus or Pinterest accounts. And I'd certainly appreciate you spreading the word to anyone you know who would benefit from listening to these episodes. I have a couple announcements this week, and the first is that I will be moving the podcast to a bi-weekly format and just releasing an episode every other week. That'll give me a little bit more time to schedule out my interviews, and also it's going to encourage me to release another podcast that I'm working on, and that one is actually going to be called 7 with Devin. It's going to be unrelated to homeschooling. It's actually going to be more related to online marketing and some of the other things that I do as a technology and online strategist. So if that interests you, I'll have more information about that coming, and you can also stay tuned on my blog at devindabney.com. But that's it for this week. I'd love to hear from you, and tune in for our next episode where we'll have an interview with Elizabeth Smith, one of the co-founders of HSLDA. So make sure you are subscribed to the blog at connectedhomeschooling.com or subscribed on Stitcher or iTunes. You definitely don't want to miss out on that.